Mesopotamia was one of the lands where the earliest civilizations in human history were born. Around 2000 BCE, in the heart of Mesopotamia, a small city was rising. Its name was Babylon. Babylon stood in the very heart of Mesopotamia. Its position along the Euphrates River played a crucial role in the city's rise. Trade routes passed through Babylon. Merchants from distant lands came to sell their goods in this city. The markets of the city filled with crowds every day. Grain, textiles, and precious goods changed hands in Babylon. The market in Babylon had a rich variety of goods. As Babylon grew, the city walls rose higher. Strong fortifications protected the city from its enemies. Buildings began to rise. Over time, Babylon was no longer a small city. It had become one of the most powerful centers in Mesopotamia. Soon, a powerful king rose to the throne of Babylon. His name was Hammurabi. Hammurabi wanted to turn Babylon into a powerful empire. For that, he first strengthened his army. Hammurabi sent his armies across Mesopotamia. The power of Babylon began to spread rapidly. Many cities, Babil Ordusunakar, Koyamat, Lar, Hammurabi's conquests began to change the fate of Mesopotamia. Cities, one by one, fell under Babylonian rule. Hammurabi's kingdom was becoming a vast empire. Hammurabi had turned Babylon into the most powerful state in Mesopotamia. His rule now stretched across vast lands. Hammurabi was not only a conqueror, he would also become one of the most famous lawgivers in history. Hammurabi carved his laws onto a great stone pillar. In Babylon, everyone could see the rules. Babylonian scribes wrote the laws onto clay tablets. In this way, the rules could pass from generation to generation. Hammurabi's laws formed the foundation of justice in Babylon. People were now judged according to written rules. These laws were extremely strict. The most famous rule was simple: an eye for an eye. Babylon was not only a city of kings and armies. In its streets, thousands of people lived their daily lives. In Babylon, craftsmen worked throughout the day. Pottery, textiles, and many goods were produced in these workshops. The Euphrates River was like a great trade route for Babylon. Goods and wealth traveled along its waters. For the people of Babylon, the gods were of great importance. Ceremonies in the temples stood at the center of the city's life. From the top of the great temples, Babylon looked like a vast city. Its streets were full of life. Babylonian priests carefully studied the night sky. The movement of the stars held great meaning for them. Babylonian scholars also made great progress in mathematics. Numbers and calculations were recorded on clay tablets. Babylonian mathematics was based on a base 16 number system. Even today, we still use it to measure time. One of the most famous stories about Babylon is the Hanging Gardens. These gardens were considered one of the greatest wonders of the ancient world. Keeping these gardens alive was not easy. Water was lifted from the Euphrates River and carried up to the terraces. The Hanging Gardens symbolize the grandeur of Babylon. Green terraces rose like a miracle in the middle of the desert. At one time, Babylon was the most powerful city in Mesopotamia. Its wealth and power were known across distant lands. Ruling Babylon was a great responsibility. Officials and scribes worked to maintain order across the empire. Envoys from distant kingdoms arrived at the palace of Babylon with gifts. These visits showed the city's power and influence. But over time, the power of Babylon began to fade. The empire was no longer as strong as before. The Persians first faced the Babylonian army outside the city. In the Battle of Opis, Babylon's forces suffered a crushing defeat. From the east, A new and powerful empire was rising. The Persians were moving toward Mesopotamia. The Persian armies finally reached the walls of Babylon, one of the greatest cities in history. Now faced a great danger. In 539 BCE, the Persians entered Babylon. The once mighty empire was now under the rule of a new power. Babylon was now part of the Persian Empire. Yet the city had not completely lost its importance. Babylon was no longer the capital of a great empire. Yet the city continued as a center of trade and culture. Babylon was no longer an empire. Yet the city continued to live as a center of trade and knowledge. As the centuries passed, Babylon slowly lost its former power. The once great city was beginning to fall silent. In time, people began to leave Babylon. The great city was slowly sinking into silence. As the centuries passed, Babylon slowly fell into silence. The once magnificent city remained only as ruins. Today, little remains of the once magnificent city of Babylon, yet its story continues as one of the greatest civilizations in human history. Follow the channel to explore more great civilizations of world history.